Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good afternoon. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours here on Radio Hamra. Our hearts and minds are still very much focused on the people of Iran and hoping for the best for them. There's a lot in the news about Iran and the US, and I've said this many times before. I don't know what's the best thing to happen, because I know that any course of action has lots of consequences, repercussions that we can't anticipate. And so I don't know exactly what is to be next or what would be best. Hoping for the freedom of the people of Iran as soon as possible. I understand if the US gets militarily involved in some ways, that could feel like this will help make the revolution happen, or at least lead to regime change. And I think that makes sense. The consequences after that are unclear. And most importantly, as always, all we can do is amplify the voices of the people of Iran and tell their stories. And so we want to continue doing that. We've seen so many tragic videos and pictures out of Iran from the people who have been killed and injured, and actually videos of those things happening, but also then videos and pictures of them, even young children, at the protests this weekend, past weekend. I got very emotional seeing first just the number of people there. This was in Los Angeles, and I heard 250,000 or maybe even 350,000, but a very, very large crowd was there. And of course, nothing compared to what the people of Iran are doing, but very nice to see, and very touching to see so many people want to show their support in that small way. And each person taking that step to be there creates a large crowd and hopefully large impact. So I was just seeing that the crowd and people being there just to support people and support the freedom of a nation that they possibly once lived in, some like me never lived in, but where the people of Iran was very touching. And then when I saw some pictures of victims that included the children, even babies, I just started crying seeing those, because it's just too painful and heartbreaking, and it's devastating no matter what. But as a new father, there is a deeper way that it hits me. I almost just can't control the emotions; just come so quickly. Seeing something happen to a baby, a child, and imagining how much of a tragedy that is for, of course, just that child to lose their life, and then just the unimaginable pain of the parents and the families. And I'll just mention one thing about that. Very proud of people for showing up around the world. That was something that was really, I think, impressive. People really did show up for this global day of action. And I think that's great. And that's all we can do, is continue to show our support. Again, amplify the voices, make sure that the eyes are not taken off of the people of Iran. And as I was saying, we've seen so many tragic, horrific things, and then some of the victims themselves, people who are injured and killed, but then also the family members mourning, and just the pain and the anguish that they are going through. What we've also seen, we're seeing more and more videos like this, is the incredible humanity of the people of Iran. Of course, the courage and the bravery, but then the response in this darkness, the darkest evil of humanity being shown by the regime, and these incredibly painful, dark experiences that the people of Iran have had to go through for so long, but then also intensified in these last few months. We've seen just the most beautiful light of humanity as well, with some of the things that we're seeing, from families celebrating at the funerals of their children, the burials of their children who were killed, to show that we are not broken by you, or we are not going to let you win in this this way, and that incredible um, courage it takes to recognize that and to try to step up to do something that might have a positive impact when you are going through so much pain. From mourners of family members passing out flowers in the same area where their loved ones were shot. Maybe you've seen those videos, or students honoring their teacher whose son, I think a 24-year-old son, this teacher was killed, and they surprised him with a type of memorial at their um, class, for him, and you see him getting, emotional, getting um, so moved by that. And it is very moving, I think, for all of us watching these videos. And so you often do see in the darkest of times the most beautiful light of humanity shining, and we're seeing that. And the people of Iran are showing us that, and they've shown so much of the best of what humans and humanity can be in the face of some of the worst of what humanity can be: killing, torturing, um, greed and power, and wanting just to keep their own power, the regime, at whatever cost, at whatever human cost, even. Um, that's you can see the worst of humanity we're seeing. In response to that, the people of Iran, the courage, the bravery through that, the humanity. Even there's so many stories of people helping each other out. I wish I had his name. The firefighter carrying wounded protesters on his back, literally carrying them um, on his back, to other people, blocking the door so that to protect some of them, so people could get away, or at least have some space between them and the regime forces. We've just seen these incredible acts of bravery and courage, of selflessness, even just protesting. I was talking about protesting here in Los Angeles or outside of Iran as a nice action, and it is, but it's nothing compared to the courage it takes to actually go protest in Iran, where that as many young people have made videos saying, "I'm not sure if I'm going to be coming home, but I'm going out to protest." And that's true courage and bravery. And then seeing just the incredible beauty of how they've dealt with their pain. And my hope is that they don't have to inspire us in these ways, or be courageous in these ways anymore, or to mourn in ways that inspire us, because they have gone through too much pain and too much darkness. So I hope that that darkness turns to light soon. Um, and we no longer have to see those types of beautiful actions, and we'll see the beauty of the people of Iran when it's a free Iran, because I know that also um, is there too, and they deserve to have that opportunity. And we can't wait to see the beauty that the people of Iran can express when they have freedom, not just when they're experiencing oppression and pain and darkness. And related to that, I always I'll talk about Iran, but I'll never talk to the people of Iran. I'll talk to them and sharing our support, but never talk in a way of giving some kind of advice to what they should be doing, because all I can do is be inspired by them, and then to share their stories and to amplify their voices. But talking to the people outside of Iran, when we are so um, inspired and just touched by the beauty of how so many of the Iranian people are responding to what they are going through, it then puts the pressure back on us, or maybe puts just the responsibility on us to also show the best of humanity that we can. Obviously, not in anything close to the same circumstances, and maybe even that privilege should make us even more uh, aware that we can do better, or make sure we do better. So first, continuing to share the stories and be the voice of the people of Iran, but also I think we want to be aware of our conduct overall, because how we respond, we're not obviously, we're each just one person, and we can't control the whole group, but of course we can control our own actions. How we respond can affect how the public will see who we are, and understand the struggle of the people of Iran. And so, what I'm thinking of specifically is online social media comments and videos and responses are notorious for being just really like the going back to the best and worst of humanity, some of the worst of humanity in verbal form. People just saying the meanest things, the harshest things. Death threats are just commonplace. Using the most vile language to describe the person you disagree with it is almost acceptable or just expected at this point. So I know that's already the context or the landscape of what we're talking about. But I do think, as Iranians trying to support the people of Iran, we understandably get very angry when we see people supporting the regime, attacking the people of Iran, saying that this movement is all, foreign agents only, and the people of Iran don't even want regime change. Understandably, it makes us very angry because it is uh, rather than amplifying their voices, it almost amplifies their suffering because it can prolong their suffering when the world thinks that these things are not there's not true, or disputing the numbers of the people killed and saying it's not that bad. These types of things do actually contribute to people suffering more. So the response or the feeling of anger is very natural, even healthy, to get upset by it. Of course, we can't control what people do, but nonetheless, when we see something wrong happening, as an injustice happening, it is a healthy response to get angry. But the important thing with all emotions, but especially the emotion of anger, is that how we deal with that feeling, how we first personally deal with it, but then express it is very, very important and very difficult. I think anger is, uh, on total, the hardest emotion for us to deal with as human beings because um, one, almost none of us have it modeled well in our families. And then also societally, I don't think anger has been modeled well of how to um, genuinely, but also appropriately express our anger in ways that doesn't hurt ourselves even, but hurt other people, except in the rarest of cases. It's an emotion that many of us think that we should just put away, or if we do ever release it, it comes out in these really extreme ways. So we have a hard time navigating our anger. And often the feeling is if I'm angry, I can do whatever I want with it because the other person is so wrong that any reaction I have is justified. And so this is where I'm asking us to show restraint, not to put away our anger, not to deny our anger, pretend like we don't feel it, or even get to a place where you don't feel the anger. I think it's understandable to get angry, and as I said, healthy to feel this anger in the face of injustice, whether it's happening to ourselves or other people. So that part of it is good, but how we express it, I think, is very important. And what I'm seeing online, and first I should say this, this is there's the war on the ground, but then the information war also plays a huge part in all of life right now, all political life, and also definitely in what is happening in Iran and how the world responds or doesn't respond to what is happening in Iran. So there are people that will say, "Oh, the people who are on this side, look how vile they are. They're all this way." And I've seen some people saying that about the people who are pro-regime change, the Iranian diaspora outside of Iran. And that's always an easy argument to make because you could talk about any issue and you can find comments from someone supporting it that are probably disgusting and vile because, again, social media is just rife with this type of stuff. Almost any, you can watch a music video that seems pretty neutral. If you go into the comments, you might find some horrible things in there because that's just something that, is part of the social media landscape, that people write the most heinous of things, and because of the anonymity of it all, and because they could just do it and maybe releasing something, all sorts of reasons for that, they end up doing that. So I'm not saying this to say that we are doing worse than other people or we are the bad guys here. Not at all. This is just a call to action or a call to responsibility that I think all of us could keep in mind, that our whole purpose is to try to help the people of Iran. And we have to think what helps them the most. And I think when we make vicious attacks online, even to people that are seeming like enemies, whether they're ignorant or whether they are willfully helping the regime, or they're being paid, or they're part of it, whatever it might be. I understand the anger, and there is this feeling of just, I want to tear you apart because you are contributing to the pain of my people. That feeling is understandable. But I do think you have to understand that if we want to help the people of Iran, if we make vicious attacks and we make death threats, if we make, sexual attacks, people will talk about raping someone, or, those kinds of comments. If we make comments about, using very vile language, so we're so angry and we turn that anger into this kind of language, into this type of rhetoric, and it feels justified. This person is doing something so wrong. I'm so angry. They're hurting people. They're hurting my people. So why shouldn't I tell them these horrible things? And so I'm not saying it because they deserve pleasant words, or, I'm thinking of those people. I genuinely don't think we should attack people anyway in that, in to begin with. But it's not because of those people that I'm saying don't say those things, although I do think we shouldn't make death threats to people. I don't support that in any way, or overlook that at all, or condone that. But what I'm especially asking us all to do is to think about what's going to help the people of Iran. And the more we show ourselves as respectable, respectful people who are very passionate about the injustice, passionate about the people of Iran, passionate about the war crimes and the human rights violations and the oppression and all of those very serious things, if we express those things more respectfully, not respectful in that we're so overly polite. So we call a spade, and we call injustice very clearly. But if we are able to avoid falling into the pitfalls of, I'm going to say the worst thing possible to show how much I support. And sometimes it's also, I always say that we have to ask ourselves, why am I saying what I'm saying? Or why am I posting what I'm posting? Sometimes it's maybe to look really cool, or to show how angry we are, to show that I'm more angry than other people. We know that this is a type of, it's a social thing, but a very much amplified on social media type of a thing, that if I show I'm more angry, that can show I'm a better person, because it shows how outraged I am by something that someone else might feel less anger or less outrage towards. So we have to ask ourselves why we're doing what we're doing, but also realizing that what will help the people of Iran the most, in my opinion, is to make sure we don't cross the lines of saying vile, hurtful, hateful things, of making death threats, bodily threats, all sorts of things of that nature. This is not actually going to help the people of Iran, because when people see these things, they think, oh, these are just a bunch of bad people wanting these things. Look at how, they won't even handle disagreement. They won't allow other people to have a different opinion. Maybe it shows even more that this is pressured by bad actors and, bad apples and all these kinds of things. And so there's this realization that, as angry as we are, understandably, and we want to call people out, I totally get that, the ways that we do it can have a big impact on what kind of impact we have, whether that's very positive or even negative. You could hurt the people of Iran by saying things in such horrible and hateful ways that it makes people associate the whole movement with these horrible and bad things. So, as I've said, we're so inspired by the people of Iran, the protests and being on the streets and everything they've done. And then also in response to the violence that they've actually experienced, physical violence. We might be seeing some kind of what we think is verbal violence, or a verbal attack of some way. Let's try to be inspired by the people of Iran and response in kind, by disagreeing, by saying the truth when we see that someone is making something up, but not crossing the line into disrespectful, hateful types of speech, because that actually will hurt them and not help them. And our whole goal is to do whatever we can to support the people of Iran. Okay, let's go to our first commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In this segment, I wanted to talk about a theme I've been discussing a lot of the show, related to power, but also related to gurus and people that we treat like gods in general, which could be in lots of arenas or fields. And I think that's problematic overall, but especially when it comes to spiritual well-being, um, personal development, these kinds of things, where we keep seeing and still have these charismatic, larger than life figures that people turn to as gurus or almost gods. Um, and for me, seeing how problematic that is, seeing how much hurt it causes. And the reason why I'm bringing it up again today, or the context I'll bring it up today, is uh, one of the biggest stories in the news in the United States is the Epstein files, and it's been for a long time. And then now, the release, and then some of they'll say 3 million pages or 3 million documents, like these kind of crazy numbers of things, and then people look through them, and then it's coming out as well. Who is in it? That's the big thing. Who's in the Epstein files? And let me also make it clear. I've said this on multiple shows. I'm not a journalist, and even when I'm talking about the Epstein files here, my focus is not to report on the Epstein files to give you information, because that's not my role, and that's not my specialty, and that's not something I'm prepared to do. What I did want to talk about is focus on some names that have been reported to be in the Epstein files, and that people's reactions or at times shock to those things, including some people in the wellness community. And one name that was um, reported in there with some emails that were very, damning and that did not look good at all, was Deepak Chopra, who was very, very big in the especially spiritual realm and consciousness field. And so I've seen lots of people with videos or writing their responses, their shock, and sometimes the pain of uh, hearing that someone they respected so much, someone that they elevated to some larger than life status, greater than human status, might have taken actions that are the lowest, actions possible, and just being shocked or just confused by that, or that it can feel hard to reconcile someone who was a spiritual leader. How could they possibly do this? What does that mean? How do we make sense of it? And not that I expected someone like him to be in there, specifically for him to be there, but I wasn't so surprised, or I don't find it very surprising. To begin with, I was never a fan. To me, I thought a lot of what he said, there were some basics that were very old teachings that are good and okay, maybe. And also, let me say this: no one's black or white, good or bad. Those actions, are black or white, definitely bad. But I say that because even if I talk about, let's say, gurus, or I talk about self-help in general, I don't think it's all bad. I don't think that's the case, or that any individual member or person is a bad person, or that none of their teachings are valuable. Because I think sometimes people say that, well, he's helped a lot of people, or she's, some of her teachings make sense, so that must mean they can't be so bad. But that doesn't mean that someone is okay, or good overall, or that they're beneficial for people or good for society. For example, you can have an actual teacher who then abuses the kids but teaches everything perfectly, but then does that. Well, would you say they are a good teacher? No, even though you can point to all the good things they've taught, that doesn't make them a good teacher, because uh, hurting the children in any kind of way is unacceptable. And so I'm sure a lot of people learn things from some of it. Again, old teachings of meditation and a variety of things. I'm not an expert on his work, but when I did see his work or his talks, I always felt that he engaged in what is scientifically referred to as, I think, pseudo profound BS, meaning that saying things using lots of buzzwords, spiritual types of words in a way that doesn't quite make sense, but making people think it's something very profound, or trying to present it as something very profound. And sometimes the more confusing or unclear it is, the more profound it could seem. It's almost a sense of, wow, I can't even understand it. Like, I kind of get it, or I felt something, but I don't really get what they said. It must be because they are so enlightened, they're so brilliant, that I can't fully understand them. And to me, a lot of what I heard from him was that, um, not to make this a full on critique of him, but I felt like an anger, and just a sense of looking down on people in a way that fits with what's coming out as well. But and also, as often is the case, the ones that become very famous or well known, they're very business minded and focused on making money. And I saw that in a lot of what he was doing. But again, I'm not here to just do a full on attack on him, and I don't even know him and his work well enough. But I'm saying this, that my lack of total shock wasn't just that I don't like him, and it wasn't as I suspected him specifically, but we see this time and time again, that someone that becomes this larger than life figure, whether it's in the spiritual world, a cult, a self help influencer, um, in the music business, the entertainment business, whatever it might be, they often abuse the power that comes with that position that they get very, very often. So you see a lot of these cases where someone who has like a cult like thing, and there's a few of these personal development cases where you can even see documentaries that'll outline those individuals. And you'll see that almost always, for some reason, part of their teachings include that the women in the group must be sexually involved with them, in some way, or they have lots of cases of sexual abuse, or creating these environments where people feel coerced or uncomfortable or not sure, and then are sexually involved with them. Or also making a lot of money and materially, and manipulating people. So from charging people a lot to then taking money in other ways, we see that they abuse their power. And of course, one part of it is that power corrupts itself. So, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if people are given power, unless they have some kinds of checks, the best kind of checks would be, internal, but that usually is not enough. We need external checks as well. That helps. If people are given power that doesn't have checks, they regularly will abuse it. So the power itself corrupts and could lead to people abusing others, unfortunately, and taking advantage of them. But the other part of the equation, which is really important, is that the people that seek this kind of power already often are abusive types of people, or have that in them, in the sense that they are seeking it, it's just almost always for the wrong reasons. They often think they're better than other people, which of course often means that deep inside they might feel less than, and this is a defense that they create some kind of narcissism, or a type of reaction to that, to make themselves superior or feel superior, and try to confirm that in a variety of ways. And so because of that, they will almost feel like they can and should get whatever they want, or take whatever they want, or treat people however they want. And it should be without consequences, or it's different when it's them, when they're the ones that are doing it. I saw a documentary I'd already seen once before last night on James Arthur Ray, who I didn't know, but he passed away about just over a year ago. I didn't know about that. I was reading up on him after I saw the documentary. And he had this really quick rise in the kind of self-help personal development world. I mean, he was in it for a while, but then the quick rise happened after The Secret movie came out, or the kind of documentary they made, and he was one of the contributors, one of the people who was explaining The Secret to people. And then he was on Oprah a few times, and then as has been the case for several people, think of Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil. The Oprah is this big kind of springboard into becoming a much more well-known. Those people even more well-known than James Arthur Ray, because it seems like his ascension got cut short with what I'll be telling you about shortly. But he became very big, and he was having big seminars. I think he said he spoke in Toronto to 14,000 people, and he was very much inspired by other self-help people. He said he went to a Tony Robbins seminar and said, I want to do this, or I will do this. And he was kind of going into that same realm. Obviously did not become a household name the way that Tony Robbins has, but was on his way and was making a great impact. And where things fell apart for him was that he very, very tragically had one of his the most expensive, I think, retreats you'd have. It's like almost $10,000 for 5 days, and they would do a variety of different things, really push your boundaries. But one of the things they would do is go into a sweat lodge, which is where you go into kind of like a hut that is made very hot, sometimes by stones, and they pour water on the stones, kind of like a, I don't know, like a steam room kind of a thing. But and then you're supposed to stay there for a long time. And even when it's, I guess, done correctly, you might vomit or almost feel like you're losing consciousness. And it's a very, very difficult and trying experience. He was saying this is kind of like a rebirth, so they have to go through it. But very tragically, three people died. And this was, I think, back in 2007. Three people died during this experience. And I think something like 18, 19 others were even hospitalized or very badly injured, but three lost their lives. And then he even served only 2 years. I think that likely was not, um, for especially the families of the victims, felt like that was way too lenient a punishment for what happened. But nonetheless, I remember when I saw the documentary almost like, I don't know, 8 to 10 years ago, originally, something really stuck with me. This line that he had, and I remember it seeing, and then I saw it again, and I was still shocked. But there was this, the interviewer asks him, about the incident. He's like, did you ever ask yourself, like, why did it happen? Kind of, it's a semi-vague question. Like, it's like, is he saying why? Is it like, what circumstances, or why isn't like this bigger, what did the God or the universe want, that kind of thing. And he said something like, it happened because if it didn't happen, I wouldn't have learned what I needed to learn, or whatever it might be. And what blew me away about that response was this mindset that even in this tragedy where three lives were lost, three families were, devastated by this tragic event, the focus was still on, maybe this was all for me to learn something. And that's actually a big theme in especially Western self-help. It's this hyper individualistic mindset of just you, and you should have everything you want, and you are so special, and all these kinds of things that, um, like all things, have some value, and it's not in those extremes, like I'm saying it there, but then they're taking to these extremes that are very, very unhealthy. You matter, but not matter more than other people. You should strive to get the life you want, but you shouldn't get everything that you want. That's not how life works or should work. But here, to me, it was even the sense that, even in this tragedy, somehow I was the most important person, and even somehow I was the biggest victim of it all, with what I had to go through. I kind of got derailed here, but just sharing of what happens when people want to be godlike, and then what happens when we turn them into gods. Rather than leading to heaven, it leads to hell. It leads to the worst types of experiences, and it turns them rather than a god, into the devil. They just start doing the worst types of things. You take someone who already thinks they're better than other people and deserves to be seen that way, and then give them lots of power and fame and money and access to people, and access to powerful people, and access to people that can protect them, and then they start doing bad things. I should say, with James Arthur Ray, this was horrible. There wasn't anything that in this documentary itself about, let's say, sexual misconduct or those things, so that didn't come up. I should make that clear. But taking things too far, clearly, is what was happening there. So we're at another commercial break. After the break, I'll come back more about the Deepak Chopra and the Epstein files side of things, and some thoughts on, as I was saying before, I wasn't expecting him specifically, but I wasn't so surprised the way maybe many were, that someone who is a spiritual leader would be in the Epstein files. So let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In the last segment, I was talking about some things related to gurus and leaders in general. And when we give people power, first, the people that seek power tend not to have the best intentions. And then when you give them power, they are now have the ability to do even more harm to others. And often that includes taking advantage of and abusing other people, almost feeling like they deserve it, or having a disregard for them. And this was in relation to reports that Deepak Chopra was in the Epstein files with some pretty disturbing emails exchanges that he was having with Epstein. or associates and all that. And so I was saying that I was not so surprised in this the way that many people might have reacted. That, well, how could someone who is a kind of a spiritual leader or promoting spirituality or wellness be involved in these kind of things? And my thinking is that a few things will come to mind that I want to share. One was that the ways that people who become gurus in the more current sense of the word, this kind of global superstar kind of guru who becomes famous and all that, they often are already talking to people like their children, or they're talking to this magical thinking part of ourselves that is more childlike. So they connect us almost in this parent-child dynamic or adult-child dynamic, and in some ways take advantage of that. They exploit that. They sell us some dream of becoming this perfect person, and that change is easy and life is easy, and they can have everything they want. Which is kind of how a child might feel, or a baby even might feel, rather than an adult. Adult has to recognize that you can grow, you can change, you can make life better, but growth and change is very, very hard. And you will never get everything you want in life, like every single thing all the time. And neither should you or expect that you should. I think this is an unfortunate idea that people sometimes will put out there, or think this expectation has any kind of validity, that you should just get everything you want all the time. It just doesn't make sense. Um, it's not realistic, and it's not healthy, and it leads to people treating other people poorly because they think, well, what I want matters. I should get what I want all the time. I shouldn't feel bad if something is feeling bad for me or doesn't feel good. You're the problem for me, or you are a problem. And I think it's ridiculous and very, very hurtful. But so in general, often these gurus and people in the spiritual and self-help, personal development world will connect to a childlike part of ourselves. And they already have this sense of being the adults in comparison to children, or this sense of being superior to inferior beings. And then we treat them that way, that they are superior, they are godlike, that they are somehow just connected to something bigger than us, brilliant in all these ways that we might look at them. And so because of that, it almost makes it seem like they should do whatever they want. And so they believe that and buy into more than anyone, and people around them often make them feel that way too. So when I see someone who seeks that type of position, and yes, there's a mutuality there. Someone can't just ask for it, and no matter what they get it. People allow them to get there, or help get them there. So Deepak Chopra could not just become who he became by saying, "I want to be that." Tomorrow, it was something that had to happen and grow and be built on, and all of that. But we had to support him. We had to get him there, and then once he was there, that's he did whatever he did. But someone who strives for that, to me, generally does not have good intentions in general, but then also does not have good intentions when it comes to other people. They might seem like they care and be very good at showing like they care, and charismatic in those ways. But they often look at people as just tools, instruments. It's very instrumental. That okay, maybe even I can help you to make me feel good or look good. They'll never say that, especially if they're charismatic and wise enough. They understand that if you say that, then people won't like you and you won't get the type of attention and fame you're looking for. But they often do look at people in this way and have that type of mindset. So I already feel when I see someone who becomes, this godlike figure to people, this sense that although they wouldn't acknowledge it, they likely do look down on other people or see themselves as above other people. And when you see yourself as above other people, there's this sense that you deserve to do whatever you want to other people, or just to get whatever you want. Forget if you're doing something wrong, this just makes things right. Even when we look throughout history, you had the nobles or the royal families, they always had this sense, and we still have that the royal family, well, they are somehow superior. So if they, they can't disrespect you because they can treat you however they want, and you must treat them with the utmost respect at all times because they are superior. So throughout history, we've had this that some people are just, for some reason or another, considered superior to other people. And then when that is established, any kind of behavior is okay and justified. And we still live in that world. In some countries, it might be even more institutionalized still at this time. But overall, we still do have this sense that all the rules don't apply to everyone the same way. In the United States, I think it's pretty clear that there is one legal system for the wealthy, and then one system for everyone else. And then someone might point a finger or a story of, oh, well, look at this person who was rich and went to jail or something. So obviously, these things aren't black or white. It doesn't mean that literally it's a complete different system that no matter what they do, they can't get in trouble. I don't mean that, but we do see that it's not equally as fair, or it's not equal in how things go. I think that's really a sad state of affairs. And I think the Epstein files is exposing that in so many ways. One is how they stayed hidden for so long, or, the fact that it was even happening for so long. So just that it was going on is one side of that with so many of the elite members. And then it being hidden and covered up for so long is another, sign of that. And then the lack of accountability. We're hearing a lot of these things being released, but it's almost like it doesn't matter. People might write social media posts or say something about it. But as far as I know, I think Prince Andrew was arrested yesterday, which actually is a big deal as far as how high profile he is, being part of the royal family, or, maybe not anymore officially, but part of the royal family of the United Kingdom. But we don't really see things happening. Whereas if we found a video of someone stealing from CVS, they'd probably be arrested that next day. But here we're hearing stories, and there's even pictures and videos apparently of people doing these horrible things. But it's still like, well, yeah, we're getting to it, or we're figuring it out, or let's see what happens. And I believe, like many people likely believe, that unfortunately or sadly, there likely won't be a lot of arrests or accountability here, which doesn't really make sense. Again, people can do something that's not even comparable, to what we're talking about here, and they'll instantly face some kind of justice. But here, it's very possible that people doing some of the worst crimes you can commit and the worst actions you can commit may just be, lose some of their reputation, if that, it even happens. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's say with someone like Deepak Chopra, I haven't heard if he's made any statements or anything that's going on, but who knows what's going to happen there. So, as I was saying, to me, what's not surprising is when people are treated like gods, usually they're seeking it, especially in these kinds of fields. Sometimes, let's say athletes, for example, I don't think we should treat as gods, but who get to that status, they of course want to do very well, or be good at the sport, but they're not as clearly trying to be just seen as superior as someone who wants to tell people, that they have the secrets of the universe and they have the secrets of, human life. That to me shows a different type of mindset or mentality. And I always think there's a range of intentions, or a range of experiences that people have when they do things like this. I think some of them genuinely believe they have almost some delusion that they have some kind of magic, some kind of the secrets, kind of the secret, but the secrets that will help people. So I think some people actually believe it when they, seek to be that. Possibly a response to feeling inferior, possibly just their own desire for attention and fame. But then there's, of course, a lot of people that I think don't think they have the full secrets or things that'll solve everyone's problems, but they're charismatic. They like being seen as better. They like the attention. They like all of that, and so they put on that show, or they know how to put on that show. And as is often the case, it's probably some of both for most people that are in this kind of, that at some level they they think they're better than other people, or they have this like a feeling that they are, and then they kind of see that they have ways of talking to people or understanding them and making them feel understood, or making them feel like they've transformed their lives, that seems to have a really positive impact, almost a magical impact. And the people are telling them, "You've changed my life, you're incredible, you're all these things." And so, it kind of creates this dynamic of maybe there's something here, but also I don't know if I actually can do all that I'm saying, but anyway, it's going well, and let me just ride this wave. So here we are. Um, but of course, we should hold everyone accountable in every way. But anyone who's, let's say, in the Epstein files, for sure, should be held accountable for their actions. That goes without saying. So we do want to uh, punish the bad actors. That has to happen. The other part that we have to keep in mind is that society in general also plays a part in creating these types of people, not who they are, the actions they take, but the station they attain and the level of notoriety and fame and feeling of being better than others that is not real, but can feel real or feel good to us. And so we create these people. We create these people that we treat as no longer people, as better than people, as gods and gurus. And I mentioned this type of, you can almost call it a formula before, that because life is uncertain and that uncertainty creates anxiety, and that feels really scary and not good at all, we try to look for antidotes to that uncertainty. We try to look for some answers, or we try to look for people who we think have the answers or who seem to have the answers that we can just follow and blindly follow, knowing that we found the truth. That as long as we follow them, we no longer have to be afraid of the world because it's no longer uncertain. We found the truth. We found someone who is certain about the truth, and we are certain about them and our belief in them. And because of that, we don't have to worry anymore. And so we see this happening time and time again. This fear and uncertainty, and someone comes in and says, "You don't have to be uncertain because I have all the answers." And it's a symbiotic relationship. I'm afraid. I want someone who can, give me all the answers. I want the attention and the feeling of being superior and the money and fame and everything else that comes with it. And so they keep finding each other, and it kind of works until it doesn't. And also works in the sense that they're both happy when they're in it, but it's not real, or it's not based on anything that is real. And so we have to be aware of our tendency to be drawn towards those individuals that are charismatic leaders, that are very well spoken and articulate and eloquent, and who claim to have all the answers. We have to be aware that we're going to be drawn to them because it could feel good, and it could feel very, very good when we believe in them and think we found the truth. And now my life is going to be amazing, and I don't have to be worried about how I'm living my life and what I'm doing. So we, of course, have to punish bad actors who do bad things, for sure. Um, but we also are responsible to make sure we don't put people on these types of godlike pedestals, because it's not real. It's something that we want it for it to be true because it could give us some comfort, but it's not real at all. And it creates these structural and power imbalances within society that then can open the doors for these horrible things to happen. And we are in that way complicit. We didn't make the actions, but we've contributed at some level to the type of society that allows for this to be possible and might allow for this to happen. Okay, let's go to another commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In the previous segment, I was sharing some thoughts in the last two segments about gurus and the way we might treat them in general, putting people on a pedestal or seeing them as more than human or almost godlike in relation to reports of Deepak Chopra being in the Epstein files, and people's shock over that how could someone who is promoting wellness be doing these types of actions. And as I said, I'm not so shocked. We've seen this so many times before, this same kind of story, maybe not exactly in this kind of way, but the same way of someone who is looked at as a god, and people see them as this incredible moral figure being involved in the worst types of actions. Even we see it in the religious community. We look at the Catholic Church. There was huge, stories of the cover-up of sexual abuse that's happening in the Catholic Church. And so, to me, even there, I see so many places and times where, when we make people elevate them in some way as superior to other people, we get into trouble. And in religion, it happens in the same kind of way. Maybe we found the religion, we know this religion is right, but we have to follow people within the religion. And so there's this feeling that the people that are the ones in power are elevated spiritually, are better than us, are closer to God, or closer to the truth. And because of that, we'll treat them with this utmost respect and devotion. And also, there can be, a much higher barrier to think that they're doing something wrong. That's unfortunately what happens. We look at parents with their children, or children with their parents, is feeling that whatever they're doing must be right. And this is why so many children who are abused by their parents, which is such a painful thing to go through, because you're being hurt by the very person who's supposed to protect you. They can have this, almost, we could think of it unconsciously as a decision. Am I wrong, or are they wrong or bad? And most children, unfortunately, will internalize the message, I must be bad because my parents are perfect and good, and all of that. So if this is happening, I must be bad. I must deserve it in some way, or I'm asking for it. Or maybe it's not even that bad what they're doing, but they rarely come to the conclusion that the parents are bad, especially when it's happening at a young age. And so similarly, when you are, let's say, in a religious community and the people in power are doing bad things, it could be a lot harder for you to recognize it as bad. Maybe it's okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding, all sorts of other conclusions might be made before the conclusion that this is something wrong or bad. So you might not see it in other people if they won't even believe it. They might think you're lying. They might think you're making it up, or you misunderstood. It can't be the truth. This is so-and-so, whoever it is, this person, and who is so spiritual, so close to God, that they can't be doing this thing that you're describing. And we often see the victims getting blamed, that either you're lying, you're making it up, you're trying to hurt this person that we think is so good, because it destroys their worldview. That if you are saying this very spiritual person, this person that I look to for the answers, who I look to for how to live a good life, is doing horrible things, that would just be too mind-boggling, too shattering to believe. So no, you must be the problem. I'm going to attack you. And this is the same thing that happens with gurus, that once they establish themselves as the person with all the answers and the truth, if someone goes against them in some ways, their followers will viciously attack them like piranhas, just trying to destroy them, because they do want to destroy them, because their existence, they're bringing up the existence of doubt, of possibility that maybe this person you're following isn't all that, is too earth-shattering for them to be able to tolerate it. So they have to get rid of it. They have to try to destroy it in whatever ways that they can. So we see this time and time again, this sense that we look to these figures to elevate, because it makes us, another way I could think about it is it's like having superheroes in the world. I think there's lots of reasons why superhero characters are so popular, from the sense of we want to be them. What if I had these superpowers? That could feel really good. But another element of it, I think, is this sense of we have this wish that there were these superpower or superheroes with superpowers out there to make us feel safer in the world. That, if we are ever stuck in a burning building, Superman can fly up there and protect us. Or, there's bad guys out there, bad things that can happen, and the superhero will protect us from the bad things. And so life doesn't have to feel as scary or as unsafe. I can have faith in these superheroes to protect me. And so some of us, well, we might not think there are superheroes with these super powers of, flying or being faster than the speed of light or whatever, superpowers there might be. But instead, we think there might be these superheroes who um, have this insight and have all the answers, that they are somehow spiritually closer to the truth, or have found the answers through, there's different ways this happens. Sometimes they're already born different. Sometimes they have some type of revelation moment or experience that then endows them with this kind of insight. Sometimes it's through incredible study and meditation. They've just lived such a different life that they've found the truth in some ways. But we see time and time again, even the whole book, The Secret, kind of there's a secret there. They found it. Once you know the secret, life becomes easy. We're looking for someone or some idea that has cracked the code, figured things out, and now life is easy. And so we can get it. There's this comfort I was saying of the uncertainty, but the sense of living in this safer world. And when we are just with ourselves, we feel like, we feel a bit scared of life and existence and everything that goes with it. So it's too scary to think we're on our own. We want there to be the superheroes out there that can protect us, guide us, and make sure that we are okay. But I think we have to accept the reality, which is there are no superheroes out there. It kind of reminds me of that quote, "Nobody's coming." You see in a lot of self-help type of literature, but nobody's coming in that sense. There is no superhero, which I think is the truth. And it doesn't mean we are completely isolated and alone at all. We actually benefit so much from our interdependence, from needing each other, supporting each other, being there for one another. That has so much value and is such a big part of the human experience, of what makes the human experience beautiful and meaningful and special in a lot of ways. But we're just, connecting with other humans just like yourself. And that is enough. That is wonderful, and that can make life great. But there are no superheroes for you to connect to. So we can, nobody's coming in the sense of a superhero isn't coming, but that we can expect or try to create the relationships with other people. We can still seek out people who might have more knowledge than us. Now, so this goes back to black and white thinking. So what I'm saying, there isn't anyone superior who has all the answers or who, can make life easy for us. It doesn't mean that no one doesn't know anything, that there are people that might have some understanding that might be valuable to us. Even a lot of these types of gurus and people that people admire, they probably had something to offer. There was something there. They likely exaggerated, oversimplified, done a bunch of things, but there's something there. So it's not to say there's nothing we can't learn from one another. It's just that no one has all the answers or can make life easy. That part, I think, is 100% true. So we have to learn to navigate with life with a planet of just other human beings. All people are just people. And that can be good enough. And accept that life will be uncertain. There's no absolute escape from that uncertainty. It's one of the existential crises that we experience as human beings, is living with and in the uncertainty of life and the anxiety that brings. When we have a negative feeling in general, whatever that might be, whether it's a physical or emotional one, what we try to do always is to get rid of that feeling. And that makes sense. Something feels bad, we get rid of it. You're thirsty, it doesn't feel good, you drink water to try to get rid of that bad feeling. You're feeling sad, you want to feel better, you want to cheer up. You're feeling angry, you want to try to release that anger or calm down in some way. We always have this type of homeostatic desire to get back to at least baseline. If not good, at least to get this bad feeling to go away. So when we feel the uncertainty and the anxiety that brings, we are seeking a escape from that, seeking getting rid of that. But I think we have to learn, like so many of the true anxieties of life, like death anxiety is also there, that although we can do something about it, we can affect how much it affects us. So it's not just, well, you have to just be miserable about it or anything like that. But we have to accept that the total elimination of it is not possible. if we're seeking some feeling that life feels totally certain or that uncertainty goes away, this is where we fall prey to looking to someone who can claim to have answers that we know they can't have, because that feels better than accepting you're still going to have to feel a bit bad at least about this, or at least sometimes. That is just the bottom line truth of it. So it's not that you are a guru or that you are uh, the spiritual leader of the world, but you are your own leader in the sense that you recognize that within you is enough power and strength to get through life, to live life. Not to live life perfectly, not to have all the answers, not to make life easy, because those things are not possible, but that you actually have enough to do it, to get through this thing called life. And you aren't in it alone. Nobody's coming in the sense that there's no superhero or godlike figure who has all the answers. No one is coming in that way. But there are people around us that can make life, first of all, just better to live and better to live through. Even one of the things that it's kind of similar to our saying that we can't get rid of that anxiety altogether. Life is hard and life has pain, and no other person can completely take that pain away from us. But what we can do is make the pain more tolerable. When we are hurting, we can feel less hurt, or the pain can feel more bearable if we have someone with us by our side, holding our hand, whatever it might be. So we do have others. And again, this doesn't solve life for us, doesn't now make life perfect and easy. You can create some of its own stresses, but it can make life a lot easier to get through and a lot better to get through. And so if we can embrace that life is going to be hard, that life is going to be uncertain, we can't take that away, but that life can still be very good, even if we still live with that uncertainty. And to me, you can only live a real life if you look at real life, which includes how uncertain things are, that there will always be that uncertainty. You can still live a very wonderful and beautiful life, and to be the best kind of life, which is one that realistically engages with life and what life is. And because of that, won't look for anything outside of what's really there to make things easier, to make things right, and recognizes the actual strength that is within each one of you. Because if we look at the dynamic of the person with the guru, as even if you watch the videos of people interacting, you just see the person looking up, wide-eyed like a child, kind of looking up to this leader who has all the answers, who's so much better than me. They're superior to us, this feeling of being better than us. And that's comforting, because if I don't have all the answers, but I find someone that's better than me, they can have all the answers, they might have all the answers. It feels good in that way, but it's not real. And so I think that's, like I was saying, the problem I have with these dynamics, or why I would not be so surprised, is it's someone who wants to be seen as superior. And that is the problem. So recognize that although you don't have all the answers, and that doesn't make you feel very good, and it makes you wish that someone did have all the answers, recognize that no one out there does either. And so you don't need to look up with someone with these eyes that I'm nothing and you're everything. Recognize that you're stronger than you are. If you're looking for someone who has all the answers, this is not because it's out there, it's because you're afraid to live within yourself and with yourself, and recognize that although I want someone to have all the answers for me, they're not out there. So maybe I have to learn to trust myself more, and to learn how to learn from other people, but in ways that is reasonable and realistic, rather than look for the person who has all the secrets or knows the secret and only make my life easy. So you're stronger than you think, and no one out there is as strong as you might hope they are. There are no superheroes out there, but you can be your own hero, even if you're not super in the sense of having superpowers. You can be your own hero and find other heroes around you, normal people heroes, who can help you get through life, even if it will never be easy. Okay, let's go to another commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In the previous segment, I was talking about how you don't have to be a superhero or look for superheroes, but you can be your own hero, or find other heroes around you that are just ordinary people, and it was in relation to how our response or reaction to the uncertainty of life and the anxiety that it causes makes us look for answers or someone who has the answers out there and someone who maybe even we can look at as more than human or better than human, but that will guide us in a way that makes life no longer have to be uncertain, but that it's not real. And so that we have to learn to live with the anxiety that comes with the uncertainty of life rather than seek out a solution to it or something that makes it completely go away. So in essence, it's an idea that we have to be able to live with the discomfort of those feelings and recognize that the feeling maybe doesn't have to be as scary as it might seem. And so, I'm using that as a segue into this other topic that I wanted to discuss, which also just is in relation to when we try to avoid unpleasant feelings or something that we think is unpleasant, how rather than making it go away, it just makes them actually scarier over time or have a worse impact. So we try to suppress them or deny them or put them away because they feel too painful or we don't want to feel them. But what we end up feeling is much worse in the long run. And so the analogy I wanted to share in relation to this is I was imagining like if you have a small dog and, this small dog, you think, without maybe looking at it, you haven't even seen it, you just maybe felt some teeth or you heard a bark and you don't even look at this dog. And so you throw it into some cage and just lock the cage because it's, in your mind, it's this really, really horrible, scary thing, even though you don't quite know what it is or you haven't even really dealt with it or related to it. You come to that conclusion that it's just this horrible thing. And the only solution is to keep it hidden and in a way and locked up at all costs. Well, what's going to happen is that over time you leave this dog in the cage, it's going to start to get restless. Not only that, it's going to start to get thirsty and hungry and need to go to the bathroom or maybe go to you use the cage as its bathroom, so to speak, because it hasn't been given the space to let relieve itself. And so what will start to happen is this dog that maybe was okay, maybe let's say had could have been slightly scary or maybe not scary at all, but maybe a little bit uncomfortable to deal with. Now will turn into a monster. Now it's maybe growling and biting whatever it can, shaking the cage, and it's going to feel like this scarier and scarier thing. But not because it was a scary thing to begin with, but because by stifling it, by confining it, you are making it become this scary thing. And then, unfortunately, what that might do for you is confirm, see, I told you this dog was scary, or I told you this beast was this really scary thing. Look at how it's growling now. Look at the look in its eyes. Look at the way it's showing its teeth and then rattling the cage. This is a scary beast. And so I think this analogy applies to how we can deal with our feelings or experiences of life or experiences of being human. I can give you an example, even let's say our sexuality. This is something that has been, you know, historically, been interpreted in so many ways, seen in so many ways, judged as just being all bad, or it should be this way or that way. And there's just a lot of taboos and moral thinking and ideas related to our sexuality, what it should be and what it shouldn't be, how okay it is or how not okay it is, how it's okay for it to be expressed or not expressed, or even with whom to be expressed, and all these kinds of things. And so, because of all of this, there's been uh, throughout history and even to the present day, parents and society at large, religion, various institutions will tell people how they should feel about sexuality, and sometimes even the sense that their sexuality is a bad thing completely. It's just sinful to even have it, or it's part of a sinful thing. And because of that, a lot of people will learn from a young age, and it can continue into adulthood, that this is just this dirty, ugly part of themselves. That this is, to use an analogy, we're already this ugly beast that they should do their best to try to get rid of, because it's always scary, it's always unsafe and dangerous. It's never something that is okay. And so people could feel that way about their sexuality. It's such a bad thing, a dirty thing, an ugly thing. I'm a bad person if I even think about it or feel these types of things. I'm definitely a bad person if I act on it, especially depending on how I do that can make it even worse. But often people get this message about their sexuality or being, being sexual in general. Even as I say it, I understand it's this emotionally charged word and phrase and part of human experience and existence. So I get that. That's why I think this analogy can apply because it can already feel like this thing that we're not supposed to be so comfortable with or doesn't feel so comfortable. And so, as I was saying, what it could lead some people to think is that if this is something bad or unsafe or immoral or dirty or all those things, I should just put it away completely. I have to deny that it exists. I have to not think about it. If I think about it, put that away instantly, never act on it, all of those things. So it's, analogous to putting the dog in the cage. I'm just going to lock it up. And in that way, it won't bother me. It won't affect me because it just will almost be invisible. It won't be actually present. But this doesn't work. You can't, put it away. And what happens is, like the analogy I was saying before, it starts to turn into a monster because when we put something away and push it down, then it starts to come out in ways that don't feel so good, and then it does feel scary and dangerous. You put that dog in a cage long enough, and then you open the door, it's going to come out like a scary beast. And so, for many people, something like sexuality, and I'm going into the example of sexuality, but it could be other things. For different people, you might realize there's something that you've put away. It could be anger, so that I talked about before, or sadness, or jealousy, or whatever it might be. Some feeling that you might be thinking is so bad to even have, or so dangerous and scary that you have to put it away. But with sexuality, because we're talking about like this thing we can put in a cage and just like completely divorce ourselves, but it's part of our physical body and emotional body and experience. It'll come up in some ways, and then what people often will see is that it'll come up in ways that might feel bad or wrong. Maybe a fantasy comes to mind that feels very dirty or wrong, where the desire to do something comes up, or they might try to deal with it in some indirect way or unhealthy kind of way. And unfortunately, it can make people take actions that make them feel even worse about themselves. Um, this is not exactly the same thing, but I remember seeing a study that people who didn't believe in sex before marriage or didn't believe, that it was a moral thing to do, if they did have sex before marriage, they were more likely not to use a condom or basically not to take the correct precautions in taking that act because it was almost so taboo in the dark. This is, obviously partially interpretation, so taboo in the dark that when they did it, almost they first of all probably weren't informed because they didn't even think about this thing. But then also it was almost like it wasn't happening. So there's almost some kind of denial or, maybe the sense of I'm doing this very bad thing, you go all the way. But there's some sense of not a healthy, realistic relationship with what they are doing. It's almost like they're closing their eyes and taking actions, which means you're going to make mistakes or not do it in the best way or the safest way. So people who think that doing some kind of action is so wrong and bad that it shouldn't even thought of or let alone done, if they end up doing it, will likely do it in a more unsafe way. So this is to me one of the challenges of life in general is how do we engage with life and how do we engage with ourselves in a way that is open to everything that it is, which includes the good, the bad, and the ugly. That there is no way to make life always feel good or to make it easy, and there's no way to make it that everything we feel will always feel comfortable and okay for us, and that's not what life is supposed to be. We have to learn how to get through those things that are uncomfortable as well. That the solution isn't to get rid of parts of the human experience that we don't like or we think is bad, but it's to learn how to relate to these beasts or these monsters and realize that they're probably not monsters at all. But if you I've been told your whole life that this part of you is so ugly and gross and dirty, it'll feel like a monster that you have to either tame or try to kill or get rid of. But you can't kill it. You can't kill sexuality as part of the human experience. You can't kill anger as an emotion that you might feel sometimes. And so realize that putting our emotions or parts of our experience in a cage does nothing to make us better people. All it does is make us create a monster out of something that doesn't have to be so scary. So I was using the example of sexuality, and for I think many people, even if they haven't completely put it away, you'll realize you have some ways that you've, put some parts of your sexuality away, whatever that might be. And by sexuality, I don't mean necessarily being, homosexual, heterosexual, anything like that. It could include that, of course, but also just feeling sexual feelings and what that what comes with that that part, just human sexuality. And so almost all of us have some issues with it because we've gotten so many of these messages of how either it's like immoral or ugly or dirty or bad or something you shouldn't feel or something you should never act on, or some messages that might be different for men and women and boys and girls and all sorts of things. We've been told so many things, whether it's directly from parents and family, but then also from society at large and media, that most of us have issues with sexuality in one way or another, some parts of it or some aspects of it, because we don't approach it with a sense of non-judgmental awareness. Let me see what I feel, what I like, what I'd like to do. There's a sense of what we should want to do and shouldn't want to do, in the sense that we have to be very careful not to do the wrong or bad things, because we might unleash the beast or do some really horrible and bad things. And we, unfortunately, are more likely to get ourselves into bad places or to create an actual monster. And we even see this in societies where sexuality is very strongly suppressed. It usually does lead to the creation of very bad sexual acts taking place, of people doing really bad and horrible things. One, because so much everything becomes done in the dark, it has to be hidden, so that opens up the door for worse things to happen. But also, there's a sense that what I'm doing is so bad that I have to maybe even do it in bad ways, or it already makes us feel bad, so you do something worse, and obviously that is a worse thing. So we can see so many societies, and I think it's every society has some ways that they stifle some parts of genuine human experience. So it's not to say this is only countries that have sexually repressive types of laws or customs or cultural norms. Different aspects of the human experience will get stifled in every kind of society, and unfortunately, when that is done, it gets unexpressed and then expressed in really unhealthy types of ways. So try to recognize that as much as you might think parts of ourselves are these scary monsters, these beasts that we have to lock up, the more we're able to engage with ourselves fully and directly and realistically, the more we might realize that some of those scary beasts are actually just a dog that we can learn to pet. And maybe it bites you a little bit here and there, but not in the scary way we might imagine it will. And we don't have to turn those small dogs into big beasts that then make life a lot more scary and hazardous to live. All right, let's go to our last commercial break. We will be right back. Welcome back. Today's show covered lots of different themes. At the beginning, talked about Iran, which will always be on our hearts and minds right now, and hopefully soon we will see the darkness that is their change to light, with the regime change and freedom for the people of Iran. I was talking about people who gain power, who gain fame and notoriety, and often it's no accident that those same people think that the rules don't apply to them, and then when they have the power, they can make it so that the rules don't apply to them. And I think that's something we do see in society. And I was especially talking about in the kind of guru personal development type of world, where we look to people who have all the answers, who have the special knowledge and the truth, and then we do that because life is uncertain. Life can feel scary because of that uncertainty, that anxiety and fear can make us seek answers or look for someone who has the answers and can tell us what to do to live the perfect life. And then we don't have to worry anymore. We don't have to be anxious or feel uncertain anymore. That's a big thing that um, most gurus put out there is some sense of absolute certainty about what they're telling. And that is no accident because it's that certainty that makes us, almost lulls us to sleep, like, it hypnotizes us into feeling comfortable that they have all the answers. I don't have to worry anymore. And they do treat us as a parent treats a child or someone who is superior and we are inferior. And we accept that dynamic so that we can get rid of that anxiety. But in that, we give away some of ourselves in the sense that we have to see ourselves as less than, to see them as greater than us. And I think we often don't recognize that that is a big price to pay. And then also, it does open up the doors for those that we make superior to treat others as inferior and to use and abuse them in whatever ways they feel like. Because they are superior, it could seem almost in some way like they deserve it, or that that's okay, or the natural order of things for them to be treated as greater than and better than other people. And I was saying that what we have to actually recognize is that we have a lot more strength within us. There's no, there are no superheroes out there, whether that's physically or intellectually or emotionally. We'll have all the answers for us, but we can be our own heroes or find heroes in ordinary people, including ourselves. Not heroes in the ways that someone will save us, but that will make life manageable and worth living, and that we can get through it. That is something that we can seek and that we can create. And so, related to that, and it's kind of related to the previous segment, because something that I've noticed a theme in the personal development, wellness gurus that are out there is this notion of one, they try to sell you this kind of imagined ideal self that you can become, that, oh, you can become this incredible human being. You too, like me, can become superior to most human beings, a superior being, a superhero, that you can become that if you follow my way. So one thing they do is they sell you this idea of this person you can become. And we have a tendency to believe that because, we all know how to live better than we actually do. And by that I mean we make decisions that we later regret. We make decisions that we know are not in our best interest long term. We give in too often to immediate gratification. We know ways that we can push ourselves out of our comfort zone that we don't, that might help us grow, all sorts of things. It doesn't mean we don't do any of it. We do, but all of us know that we can be doing better, that we've missed lots of opportunities for growth. We've done lots of things that have hurt us in different types of ways. And so we have this, idea that we're like, what if I made all the right decisions? I know them. I know what to do. If I could just kind of, get my head in the right place or have the right motivation and the right inspiration and maybe some support, but really I know what to do. I got to just do it. And so because of that, we can almost fool ourselves into thinking there's some way that we can live this a quote unquote perfect life. We don't actually know exactly what's perfect to do, but we know kind of this idea of we can do better. We know the right things to do. We just have to do it. And this even, more than just that, this idea that, we all have aspirations of becoming something. We might think, and this is something that the gurus often exploit, this like, there's something special in you. And we all kind of have that, or almost all of us can have that sense of, yeah, I think there really is something really special in me and about me. And then maybe it hasn't been unlocked. But then once it gets unlocked, oof, I'm going to be just this superstar, or I can be this incredible force of nature, and that's going to be unleashed. So the gurus and the personal development types of influencers and superstars are very good at selling you this imagined ideal self that you can become if you follow them, if you read their books and take their seminars and take the next seminar and take the highest seminar, the most expensive one, you're going to get there. So they sell you that. But another thing that they do is directly and kind of indirectly, because they can't obviously just say negative things about you, but they do make you feel even worse about who you are now. And they do that by also exploiting what they know is this very human experience, which is related to what I was just talking about, or even almost exactly like what I was talking about. That you haven't made all the right decisions. You've made mistakes and done things that hurt you, and done short term things, and done all sorts of stuff, or haven't pushed yourself the ways that you should, and done the right things. And they know that a lot of us are also prone to shame and feeling really bad about ourselves and guilty, and feeling embarrassed and disgusted by the things that we've done and things that we haven't done, and that it's just so bad. And so what they do is they actually make us feel worse about our current state, or about who we are now. And they might even present it as tough love. Hey, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but you know that you aren't what you're supposed to be. You know that whatever. There's some kind of wording and phrasing that doesn't say you're a loser, but kind of might imply that you almost are. And even their story might imply that too. Kind of like, I used to be a loser just like you, but now I'm this amazing person after I had my breakthrough and then changed my life. And now I'm going to share those answers with you of how you can go from being a loser without actually saying the words to becoming, a superhuman individual. And you have to just follow me. So interestingly, they kind of increase the space between where you are at now and where you can be by telling you that what you can be is something greater than what is realistically possible, and making you feel that where you are now is even worse than it actually is. And I think that's really unfortunate, but I think it's a playbook and a recipe that works, in the sense that it can get people to follow you, because people are prone to shame and they know what they've done. And they also know that not everyone knows what they did, but now it seems like this person almost sees through me, because they're calling me out on, how bad I've been. And they're tapping into this magical thinking that we can all have of, you can be this superhero. You don't have to look for a superhero. You might become one yourself. I'm a superhero, and if you follow me and follow what I did, I see it in you that you have what it takes to become this monster, this incredible human being that's better than almost any human being. So they increase that distance by making us feel worse than we actually are, and that we can become greater than is realistic for us to become. And then they sell themselves as the bridge between this really great distance that, I can help get you there. It's so far, but I have the tricks. And usually, we can do it very quick. It's breakthroughs. You don't have to go through, years of therapy or years of change. It's just something that we can change it essentially overnight, or in a moment. Then they might even snap, where they do it kind of to imply this like moment, and to kind of intensify the how they present it and deliver it. And so, to begin with, I don't think you can become a superhero, because I don't think anyone can, going to what I was saying before, to not put anyone on a pedestal. And so we have to uh, kind of shatter this illusion of this superhero that we can become, that it's not realistic. I don't mean you can't improve and become a lot better. We all can. We all can improve. But what can sometimes come up is this idealized imagined self that isn't realistic. And we have to realize that, okay, uh, I'm not a robot. I can't be this person that always makes every single right decision. And I can't even know what right means to always make the right decision. Life is much more complicated than that. Things are much more complicated than that. So that's one part. But then the other part, and I'll focus just these last few minutes of the show on that, is this idea that you are worse than you actually are, that I think is also put forward by, emphasizing the negative that we've done and the things that we haven't done, making us feel even worse about it. I think that's something that we also have to be aware of. And so I'm not here kind of, now I don't want to sound like one of the gurus I was talking about, to sugarcoat it. So I'm not here to sugarcoat it for you either, to say that everything you did was right. That's actually something they might do. Again, there's this like back and forth, almost like a love-hate, making you feel very bad about yourself, and also good about yourself, bad about who you are and good about who you can become. There's a lot of this back and forth that's kind of done to keep us hooked, and to make us feel like we have to turn towards them. So I'm not here to tell you, oh no, actually you're perfect and nothing you did was ever wrong. No. Could you have lived a better life? Yes, every one of you that I'm talking to, and then of course myself very much included, could have made better decisions. When you look at the grand total of all the decisions you've made, for sure, that's just thousands of things you could have done better at least. I don't know how you count these things, but so many times. But it probably isn't as bad as you might think, especially if you're someone who's prone to shame. So one of the lessons I've talked about before is that this advice isn't for everyone. So there could be people listening that might think too good of themselves and not want to see, haven't seen the negative at all. But I think most people can really get too affected by the negatives and see themselves as so negative. And this is actually something that the self-help world exploits, is tapping into that shame, as I was saying, and making you feel even worse about yourself. So you feel even more this need of something, that you need the answers. So most of us are probably doing better than we think. None of us are going to be superheroes. None of us are going to make the right decisions every time. Being human means making mistakes and growing and learning, and still making sometimes even the same mistakes, but hopefully trying to make them less often, or maybe not at all over time. But we will keep making mistakes, and we have to recognize there is no end goal where you have nothing left to learn or you stop getting it wrong. Whatever you're doing, life is always a challenge. It's kind of like you're walking on a tightrope. I don't mean to say it's that scary or that precarious, but the sense, people talk a lot about balance, which I think is a very important um, part of life and something that we have to try to figure out. But balance doesn't mean there's this sense that once you achieve it, it's like a static thing. You have to keep maintaining your balance and rebalancing yourself. So life will never become easy in the sense that you've solved it, which is something also that the self-help world might try to sell you sometimes, that there's like these almost like solutions that will make life easy and give you this easy recipe. It'll always be hard and challenging, and you'll make your mistakes and have setbacks, but that doesn't mean there's something so bad or wrong about you. And being a therapist, I so often have, really, it's an honor when you get to have people welcome you into their deeper thoughts and feelings and experiences. And so often, sadly, I see that so many people can feel a strong sense of shame of who they are, that they are bad and they are, unlovable because of who they are and what they've done, or maybe even something they don't even know, but it just feels like there's this black mark on them. So many people can have that experience. And I think it's so sad, because I think we just have this feeling that something is wrong with us, even though we don't know what, and we think that must be true. But it's a very common human experience. And so I realize I'm running out of time here, but there's this sense that if we could realize that, not that it means everything we've done is right, but that getting it wrong a lot of the times is part of being human, hopefully we can let go of some of that shame, and to make sure that anyone who directly or indirectly is trying to make us feel more shame and trying to pretend like it's tough love, they're usually trying to sell you something, themselves, a course, a seminar, but it's not true. You're not so bad, or you're not this really bad person. You can grow, you can improve, you've made mistakes, yes, but you don't have to feel so bad about yourself. You are not so bad, and there's no superheroes out there. We're all just humans trying our best to be human beings. All right, that brings us to the end of today's show. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee, Free Iran.